Vinayak Chatterjee joins us now. I'm going to shift something which is more bright and chirpy, the Indian infrastructure space, and there is only good news coming from there. Vinayak, every time we've discussed the infrastructure space progressively in the last couple of years, brick by brick, slow but gradual, things are moving in the right direction. What is the headline
Yes.
news for our viewers? How would you say the infrastructure sector has evolved and moved in last 12 months?
Okay, so the headline news, and I'll look ahead, is that we have a 10 lakh crore budgetary provision in this year's union budget, which is for the fiscal year 23-24. Now, the rule of thumb in the infrastructure sector is that when the central government spends on infra, an equal amount gets spent by three other entities: states, public sector enterprises, which is off the balance sheet, what is called off the budget, extra budgetary resources, and three, private sector. So if the expectation is that if the central government if allocated 10 lakh crores, then another 10 lakh crores will come from the balance three players: states, private sector, and public sector enterprises and extra budgetary resources. So you're looking at a 20 lakh crore investment in infrastructure, which is probably the best that we would ever have seen, because informal estimates about last year was closer to 15-16 lakh crores. So that is the headline good news, and the sub-headline good news is that we are also entering an election year. So what typically happens in the year before an election year, that government pulls out all the stops for public expenditure, cutting budgets elsewhere. So the combination of these circumstances, I think, will lead to very good order books for companies who are in the EPC space or in the second differential space, where you supply goods and services to the infrastructure sector. Are there worry lines? Yes, there are worry lines, which is that the data till about December, January has shown that central government expenditure has been pro rata on track as per last year's budget. But states have significantly fallen behind. Private investment in Indian infrastructure is still far distance away. The confidence is not there to put balance sheet money into PPP projects yet. And the extra budgetary resources should be on track because they're largely PSUs. But the worry line is on private capital and states picking up their expected shares. The other worry line is that there is a jugalbandi at work. The jugalbandi is National Infrastructure Pipeline, which is 20 lakh crores per annum and which is largely dependent on government and these institutions funding public expenditure. And the jugalbandi is that there is a national monetization pipeline which is supposed to monetize existing operating projects, which are called brownfield projects. So public expenditure for greenfield, monetization of brownfield are supposed to be the left hand, right hand tabla that should be playing together. So while the public expenditure pipeline is expected to be positive, unfortunately, the experience on this whole business of monetization, disinvestment, privatization has been far, far below expectation, as you well know. The target for this year was 1,62,000 crores. I am not sure what the 31st March figure is, but I am told it's going to be somewhere between 40 to 50,000 crores. So 1/3 achievement. So the monetization story is not playing out. And that might impede the, shall we say, the speed with which we could have expected public expenditure to increase. But I've said a lot. Let me pause here to take some questions and remarks from you.
So let's look at the core sectors. Road has been a runaway success, literally. Road has been a runaway success. Which are the other sectors where you say that there is more success than policy failure?
Railways. See, railways till almost 3-4 months ago, you will see that EPC players were glowing in their reports of how much order book they were getting from railway tracks and from electrification, as well as from metro projects. So that I would feel is a success, although I am getting anecdotal evidence. So don't please hold me to it, but the anecdotal evidence I'm getting very, very recently from EPC players is that the orders on railway track and electrification have kind of slowed down. and the allocations to stuff that is far more visible in the public eye, and no surprise in an election, in an oncoming election mode, which is the budgets appear to have been shifted to the acquisition of some 3-4 or to the manufacture and acquisition of 300-400 Vande Bharat trains, as well as in station redevelopment. Now, you will agree that this is politically very astute, because these are things that the voting public can see, whereas new tracks and electrification do not get the same attention. So there is this little shift in railway allocations that are happening, which I think EPC companies which are looking at track and electrification need to watch out for. But overall, railways has been a success. I would say that electricity transmission has been a success, and certainly renewable continues to be a success story in this country, particularly solar with some hiccups in wind, but it continues to attract large investments.
And
Let me stop here.
let's talk about it. I mean, our understanding of the solar industry is that the planned projects, which in a sense were committed, have not taken off largely because of the whole China import dependence.
Yes.
The rates are not all that encouraging, and that is something which is the need of the hour, but it is just not getting addressed.
You are bang on there. I think the story that was unfolding very well has got hiccups, and I'm using that word. The intent to invest in renewables is largely there. The funding of domestic and international investors is positively waiting in what I would call the security cleared departure area. It is just that the investments have to take off on the ground, and the story on the imports from China, the protection duty, as well as certain changes in laws on the modules, etc., have kind of given a bit of a pause. But I would call it a pause. I would call it a hiccup. The fundamental interest in that sector is unquestionable, as well as the sheer investor interest in investing in that area.
Vinayak, just wanted to get a sense from you, how the other sectors shaping up, let's say urban infrastructure, irrigation, waste management, etc. Are you seeing any sort of momentum there as well, or it's largely just roads, railways, and maybe a bit of power, which is seeing a bit of an impetus?
Let me pick up urban infrastructure.
Sure.
You know, it is now a fairly well-established perception that these smart city projects have not taken off as envisaged. In fact, going back, many of us had critiqued the very low allocations that were made for smart cities, where a certain amount of limited capital was spread across some 100 smart cities, which even at that time didn't look very credible. But anyway, we said, let's wait and see. What has happened now is that two disturbing reports have come up, which have actually woken up the finance ministry and the planners. One is the World Bank report on the state of India's cities, and the RBI report on the state of the finances of India's urban local bodies, ULBs, and the crying shortage of funds there. Looking at both of these, I think what you have seen the finance minister do in the last two budgets is to significantly turn the spotlights on municipal bonds. Even as we speak, there is a major capacity building exercise, and there is a very major spur with the urban ministry requesting the states and various cities to get on with the various cleanup that is required in terms of professionalism, in terms of raising user pay charges, etc., to make them municipal bond issuing ready. As I understand it now, 30 cities with decent credit ratings have already been identified, and top of the list are Visakhapatnam and Surat, which will follow historically the success in raising bonds of Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Indore, etc. So municipal bonds, to my mind, is a significant capital market instrument to watch out for, which hopefully will begin a new trend on cities organizing finance themselves. As the 74th Amendment said, cities should pick up their own charge of their own destinies. And municipal bonds is a surefire way of not only cleaning up the systems, processes, professionalizing the administration, but also approaching capital markets. So that is something that I would like to highlight for your viewers.
Whatever we may talk about roads and municipal, please come to Mumbai and tell us how roads in Bombay can be repaired.
I am sorry. I will be unable to service that request. Living in Delhi, whenever I visit Bombay, as soon as I land and I see the chaos of construction and traffic, my first desire is, let me finish my work and go back to Delhi. So I really apologize. That's one area where all our infrastructure expertise and knowledge stops.
But Vinayak, let's look at another very constructive thought of the government, which is Har Ghar Mein Jal and Nal, irrigation.
Yes, yes.
The progress there has been okay. It's not been great.
I like the way you said okay. I mean, that intonation says everything that you would want me to say. But anyway, listen, it is clearly the most ambitious development project in the world. Nal se Jal, as part of the Jal Jeevan Mission, India had 19 crore households which did not have piped water reaching them. While the implementation has not been dramatic, but there have been patches of very successful implementation. Surprise of surprises, I just saw data that Bihar had exceeded 99%. So has Goa. So has, I am forgetting, one of the northern states, it's either Himachal or it's possibly Himachal. And many other states are close to the 95% mark. So when you go through the Nal Se Jal data, you will be pleasantly surprised to say that while there have been areas where it is still work in process, there have been large portions of the Indian geography where the data is showing up as 95% implementation plus. Now that is something to cheer about. And now after the hardware is put in, I think the emphasis has to shift to saying, is the services coming through? Are we getting clean water 24/7 at the right pressure? And are the right operations and maintenance institutions in place? Because the whole approach is to have subcommittees in villages called Jal Samitis take care of their own pipes and water sources. So those are things that attention has to go to. But overall, I would be appreciative of the efforts made in a very, very difficult situation of actually going to the water source and then collecting households. Back to you.
Okay, Vinayak, thank you so much for joining us today. Paucity of time, but would have loved to discuss the topic more, but appreciate you joining us on 18 Hour today.
Thank you. Been a pleasure to be on the channel. Thank you.
Likewise. But for the